Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. We're back again and we have someone from the community on, and that someone is JEN KARPIN. Jen is the owner of Morning Glorious, a vintage clothing and accessory store here on Elliot Street, downtown. She comes with years of experience, expertise, and ever-changing inventory. Jen is on the board of directors of the Vintage Fashion Guild, and she's going to talk with us today about the joyful wardrobe and dopamine dressing. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, we're really glad to have you on. And I just want to mention to folks, I have on an item from Morning Glorious, which is why I'm so dressed up today. Anyway, this beautiful sparkling top is available. Many things like this are available at Jen's store. So stop by, because they're just, you never know what you're going to find. So Jen, now that I've done a little pitch.
Yes. And so fun to see you dressed up. It's great.
I know, I've never dressed up for the show before. I try to keep a low profile.
I'm honored.
Growing up, you were surrounded by art and antiques and auctions, tailoring, sewing, all kinds of things. And your mother's closet was full of fabulous clothes too, I believe.
Yes, that's true. I really had a very unique childhood. My parents had moved from Long Island to Vermont before I was born in the 1950s, and purchased an 1820 federal farmhouse with secret passageways. It was actually on the Underground Railroad, and 7 fireplaces. It was a very sort of magical antique house.
Yeah.
And my father was self-employed mostly throughout a lot of his career, and sort of gave me that entrepreneurial spirit later on. My mother was an illustrator, visual artist, poet, children's book illustrator, and loved fanciful and beautiful things. So my childhood was very much influenced by my mother's love for fashion, for garments, for jewelry, antiques, even antique toys. And, you know, like a lot of kids were playing with Barbies. I had a little bit of that, but I actually was playing with like porcelain dolls from the 1800s as a kid, because my mother would take me to the country auction. We would typically go around southern Vermont, bringing our folding chairs and our bologna sandwiches, and look for treasure. And so an antique doll, an antique dress, anything that she would say, do you like that? Would you want to wear that? Would you want? And then she would, you know, bid $5 and win these things. She furnished our entire home beautifully with things that she restored, reupholstered, stenciled, that sort of thing. So growing up, I was very immersed in things from the past, and sort of taught to value that workmanship and beauty in those pieces. Well,
it's so impressive that you've carried that on too, because some, like I know I was dragged to many auctions and antique stores and stuff, and I can remember just being kind of, you know, an annoying child in the corner. So it's great that you not only appreciated it, but it became your way of life too.
I also love the thrill of the hunt involved in that too, kind of a little bit of a, you know, an adventure game. And
that's what you've created in your store. It's always an adventure to see what you have in there. Your dad also, you wrote a wonderful article about your dad that ran in the Commons a while back. He was a bombardier, a navigator, and a pilot in World War II.
I'd gone with him to see the World War II planes that had come to the Keene Airport, and I was asked to write a piece about how he interacted with the crowd and with the planes going in them again as a 90-something-year-old, when he had been a 19-year-old during World War II.
Oh, wow. And he received a presidential citation from FDR.
He did. Yeah, he was definitely a war hero.
You had siblings, but they are much older, which probably also you became a companion for your mother, I think, in a lot of these things, right? You were the kid who went along to the shows and all of that.
Yes. My sister's 16 years older, and my brother's 13 years older.
Oh, wow. Yes. You were almost an only child.
Kind of, I felt that way,
You went to the East Hill Farm School.
Right.
I had never heard of that. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. I started off going to the Grafton Elementary School. I was born in Grafton, and went there for my first 3 years. And then I wound up transferring to East Hill. And East Hill Farm School was, it no longer exists, but it was a remarkable school that was isolated on a farm in Andover, Vermont. And it was first grade up through high school, all of the kids together. It was run by the Bliss family, and they had created an environment to nurture their own sons and their sons' needs, and then brought on other students. And so most of the kids lived there. I was one of maybe 3 or 4 day students, and I was the only girl in grades 1 through 8. It was very small, like we called that the little school, and there was mostly, boys and me. And we were very creative. We learned about, I remember learning about Greek costuming, Greek clothes and what they wore, and then we would make the clothes out of fabric or sheets or whatnot for our written presentations. We were given a lot of freedom to research and investigate things that interested us. It was wonderful.
Yeah. But it wasn't affiliated like with Waldorf, with Montessori or anything?
I don't believe it was affiliated with anything.
During your childhood, you mentioned going to your mother's closet and seeing all of her dresses. Now, was that a time when you would dress up?
Well, as I got a little bit older and I got into high school, I found that her clothes fit me, and I thought that they were extremely lovely. My mother was born in 1924. Her favorite pieces that she had saved were from the 40s when she was a young woman. My parents got married in 1947. And so she had a closet full of these beautiful floral printed, cold rayon, flattering dresses with peplums and shoulder pads and these lovely things. And so they fit me. And she was like, knock yourself out. So I would wear them to high school. And there's a picture somewhere of me, getting an award or something. And everybody, all the other kids are like, a flannel shirt and jeans, and I'm wearing a 1940s, peplum dress. So I was, definitely a little bit ostracized, a little bit bullied, and also earlier as a younger child, my mom would dress me. She would put out the pretty dresses when I was a little kid, and say, "I'm laying out your clothes. This is what you're wearing tomorrow." And I remember, a moment where I said, "Well, I want to buy something and wear something that I want." And it was this real breakthrough. And yet I could still come back and choose the things from the past that were flattering and well-made.
Yeah, you didn't rebel. That's pretty impressive. You embraced.
I found my own way, and I had different styles throughout the years. I had the punk phase in college. I shaved the sides of my head and, wore Doc Martens and men's clothes and, had the blue fingernails.
Oh, that's good. So you're pretty well-rounded.
I've had several, versions of myself.
You started doing different things. One thing, and this actually wasn't all that long ago, but you had a store in Putney.
I did. The first retail store, also called Morning Glorious Vintage, was in the Black House in Putney,
which is now a White House.
I've heard that. I haven't driven by since it changed colors.
And was that Artifacts jewelry too?
That was earlier.
That
was earlier. When I was living in downtown Brattleboro in the 90s, I started a company called Artifacts, and I was making handmade jewelry, found objects. I did study some jewelry making, mostly at Art New England, mostly with Bob Ebbendorf, and I took some classes with Thomas Mann and some other jewelry artists, and I learned soldering and things like that, but I was mostly drawn to assemblage, so I was picking up like broken auto windshield glass on the street and using that glass with like maybe postage stamps or Fimo clay and making brooches and earrings and things like that.
Fimo, I forgot all about Fimo.
Fimo was, or friendly plastic was another one where you could cut the metallic plastic and then bake it in the oven and it would harden. So I was doing that. I had my work in maybe about 15 or 20 galleries. I was working at Marlborough College at the time, actually, and so it was sort of a hobby business, but I felt like it was a great creative outlet, and I enjoyed it a lot.
I have a feeling that you always have had a creative outlet of some kind.
Right? I studied photography at the Art Institute of Boston, and I was doing fine art photography. I thought that might be a career. Which it wasn't, but I did work for a little while as the gallery director in Brattleboro at the Vermont Center for Photography.
Oh, nice,
Before, right up to when I opened the Putney store for the vintage. And those also segued because I had been selling the vintage out of a barn in Grafton and working at the gallery, and then, once the store was opening, then I moved away from the gallery.
So now this was before you went online. Was it before there was an online?
I had been on eBay before any store opened, I had been selling vintage I kind of fell into the online because I needed some money, and I was sort of in between things. I had been in music publishing also for a while, and when I transitioned out of that, I was like, well, I need to eat now. So I started selling some of those 40s dresses out of my closet on eBay, and then I kind of realized that I could also go out into the world and look for things that I recognize as being vintage or antique and purchase them to resell. But that was also a business.
Yes. And so you started gathering to you.
Yes.
You started the hunt.
Yes.
Again. Yeah.
And the hunt that didn't happen to just be only for myself, I realized that I could sort of just share that with others.
When we spoke the other day, Jen, we were talking about vintage, and I said, there are a lot of vintage places in town, in Brattleboro, and I've been thinking that it's kind of a haven or a locus, and you said, what do you call vintage? Which I thought was a really good question, and it really made me stop and think. So we have experienced goods, we have Twice Upon a Time, we've got Boomerang, we've got Distinctive Decor, and also the one that's right next door to you. Verdigris, right next door to you. Now, not everybody is all clothing centered.
Right.
But can you describe a little bit of the difference between everybody?
Well, I think that Twice Upon a Time is an amazing venue for many, many different sellers and booths and all sorts of, collectibles and things like that. And they do have secondhand clothing. They have a little bit of vintage clothing. I think Boomerang, the same, like they started out as vintage clothing store, and now it's a little bit of vintage, and it's retro. Funky things that are new. And then Verdigris has a beautiful small selection of vintage clothing. And same with Distinctive Decor, they've added clothing to their home goods. So there's a lot of choices of stores where you can find some cool stuff.
And now that so you've been online, and you were also working out of your home a little bit, a little building outside of where you lived. But now that you're on Main Street in a brick and mortar, how is that for you?
It's amazing. It's really great to jump back into retail. I definitely worked at home and online and did shows in between closing the putty store and opening this store. I wanted to be more in the community. I knew I wanted to do something with the clothes, and it really evolved beyond just I'm selling things that are old to I'm selling things that put a smile on people's faces. I'm selling things that make them feel great about what they're wearing. And the standard for me is that it is technically vintage. It is 20 years old or older in most cases. What like the definition of vintage. But it has to fit the wow factor. It has to be for dopamine dressing or be very desirable men's wear, American-made denim and workwear, and that sort of thing is sort of another offshoot of what I do. And when you're saying that your tagline is the joyful wardrobe.
What's that?
The joyful wardrobe.
The joyful wardrobe. Right.
And
also I bet that you often hear people walk in and say, "Oh man, I wish I'd kept my old clothes." Right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I hear that quite a bit from older folks. I had one of those, or remember Nana had that, and I should have kept that. I should have kept that.
Right.
And then sometimes, of course, they do say, I have a closet or a house full of clothes you might want to see.
So that's another place actually that you get some of your inventory. Is you go to homes. And,
I do. I do house clean outs if someone is moving to assisted living or someone's passed away and there's a power of attorney. I'm often contacted and asked if I would like to see the clothes because they look like they're vintage and worth making a trip there to investigate.
And even though you probably don't always score, it's worth it, right? Because you don't know.
It can be the best because it's fresh to market, things that have been preserved and waiting for decades maybe.
This is kind of a trick question for you, but is there anything that you have found that really stands out as something that was really spectacular, that took you totally by surprise?
As far as inventory? Oh gosh, I mean, there's been some great ones over the years. There really have. I've found like a Pucci purse, Emilio Pucci, Italian designer, silk in the box, from I think it was Bergdorf Goodman with the price tag still on it from 1962 or something like that. I've found really interesting receipts and things in pockets and things that tell a little story about someone's life, which I love to find, that they went on a cruise and what it cost, or in the 70s or something like that. I find remarkable pieces all the time, 1920s dresses. Of course, those are much harder to find now.
Yes.
One of the most unusual pieces I found actually was not wearable, but I was at an auction once years ago, and it was cold and rainy under a tent. People were dispersing as the auction went on. There were very few people left. And the auctioneer put up a basket, and he said, it's a basket full of hankies. Sight unseen, I hadn't seen any basket full of hankies at the preview, and he said, who will bid? And nobody bid, and I, said, okay, $5, and I won it, and took my time going through the hankies, but as I was going through them, there was something unusual folded up in the middle, and it looked like a copper engraving, and I'm opening it up, and it's this big, it was a campaign banner for William Henry Harrison. Wow. That was copper engraved for when he was running for president. That president was president for 2 months, I believe, before he died in office. And I had Karen Augusta, fabulous textile appraiser and mentor of mine, look at it and appraise it. And she said, this is the real deal, and there's maybe 3 left in the world.
Wow.
And she sold it in one of her auctions for me.
She did.
Yeah, so that sort of thing. You never know what you're going to find.
Yeah,
it could be a piece of history.
Yeah.
Textiles are just a wonderful,
yes,
land to explore.
Yes, and they're ephemeral too. That's not like finding a painting or finding something made out of metal. Talking about Karen Augusta, I know that she has sort of been one of the go-to people for all kinds of the film industry and television and things like that. But you also were featured in the New York Times, Elle Magazine, Vogue, and USA Today.
Yes.
And your shop that was in Putney, which we just mentioned in 2012, was voted one of the top 10 best small vintage stores
in the United States.
In the United States.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
It was really cool.
Yeah, very cool.
A lot of screaming when that article came out. Yeah.
I bet. You've also supplied Broadway theater productions, independent films, photography shoots, Mad Men, and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yes.
And her clothes are really noteworthy.
Yes. I did mostly accessories with The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and some of her father's cardigans were from my shop.
Interesting.
But Mad Men, the clothes were for the character played by Christina Hendricks. Very hard to fit. Her measurements are extraordinary. And,
interesting.
So I worked on sourcing for her, for her character. But yes, Karen Augusta, I want to say her company continues. Her husband and her staff, she passed away a couple of years ago, sadly, and they're doing a wonderful job keeping the auction house running. But she was a mentor to me as I got started in the business. She definitely, people said like, oh, she might see you as competition as you're getting serious about this, or she might not be that warm and fuzzy to you. And that's not at all what I experienced. She was gracious and lovely, and she was so delighted that I was really interested in vintage clothing. And she said, well, come over, let me show you things, let me answer questions for you, anything that you need. Let me help you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, she was a lovely person.
Yes, she
and
was.
Similar upbringing to you in a way, in that her family, her father was quite a well-known artist, and she kind of grew up in that environment.
She was also a truck driver for a while.
She was?
Yes. Yeah, she was. She drove big rigs. Yeah. She's a really fascinating person.
This is why I do this show, right? The unexpected. It's like you finding a treasure trove. It's like, wow, did not know that. One of the things that you did along the way was you were involved with an organization called Pink Creatives. If you could just talk a little bit about that.
I had a wonderful experience. It was in 2023. I just had this feeling when I heard about this that I needed to be there. And it was one of those things where like a little voice is, nagging in your ear. You have to be there. You have to go to this. And it seemed kind of crazy because at the time I was kind of struggling and lost. And I picked up and flew to Texas by myself. I went to Round Top area and did a workshop with the Pink Creatives, which is basically 2 teachers. It's Sarah McDaniel and Wendy Conklin. Wendy Conklin is known as the chair lady. If you look her up, she reupholsters chairs in the most fanciful, imaginative way that you can imagine, you can possibly imagine. And Sarah has been on a lot of covers of magazines, Southern Living and things like that, for her decor, her renovations of old buildings, and the way that she decorates homes, things like that, were just award-winning. And both these women just brought in other women who had creative businesses or wanted to begin a creative business. And what was so marvelous about it, we ate and gathered together for several days, and they just opened their hearts, their stories, and the books of their business. They said, money is taboo. You can go to all kinds of business workshops, but you're not going to hear somebody say, this is how much money I made last month, and this is what part is taxes, and this is what part is investments. And they did that with their businesses for us, and then gave us each the time to talk about what we needed, where we were going with our creative businesses. And so it was like this sisterhood. In a very embracing way. I should say that PINK stands for play, inspire, niche, and know-how. And those are the 4 things that they teach. I left there realizing that my niche isn't just that I buy and sell older garments. My niche is what was happening in my life was I was giving myself permission to wear this. To come out of a time where I was very depressed and very agoraphobic and going through a lot of bad stuff, and coming out of this sort of bad mental stuff, a big part of what I was doing, in addition to the help I was getting, the resources I was getting, was I was giving myself permission to wear stuff that felt fun. And it was a crazy breakthrough, because I realized that it was changing how I felt when I got up in the morning and I put on something that made me laugh, or something that made me go like, oh, I love these colors, or oh, that print is so cool. So maybe I could teach people, or I could show people, or I could share with other people that you could affect your mental health with what you put on in the morning. Maybe it's your favorite colors, maybe it's the shapes or the textures. Maybe black is your favorite color, but you do it with intention, right? And there's the scientific research, right, about dopamine dressing. Like, that's a catchphrase, but it actually means that you're raising your dopamine, your serotonin levels are literally changing in your brain if you get up and put on that. Right? And don't we all need a little boost? Right?
No, it totally makes sense. And it's also for you to experience that yourself, and then to be able to give that to other people.
And so it segued with that workshop, because the PINKs ladies were saying, what's your specialty? And I'm like, I don't know. I make jewelry, I take photos. And then I was like, oh, wait, it's this concept of bringing joy to others with our we give ourselves permission.
That's right.
To dress up just a little bit.
And walking into Morning Glories, you really feel that.
It's a lot of color, right?
It's a lot of color. But it's also, the other thing too that I want to mention is that you're very curated. You're very picky about what you have in there. You clean and mend things before they go on the rack. You're starting to offer things like sewing circles, having people from the bikini come in, teaching people how to mend and put on buttons, basic things like that. You do have some vintage housewares and decor in there as well.
And men's clothes. A lot of people say, do you sell men's clothes?
Yes, men's clothes.
We have men's clothes that are not crazy.
And I know that you're hoping to have a seamstress come in who can be helpful in terms of fitting people.
We have that. We're setting that up for a seamstress to help with alterations, repairs. We're going to do more workshops, like Stephanie Green did a hemming workshop. We're gonna add a lot more to the offerings.
Going back to our community and offering things to the community. It's not just another clothing store. It's a fabulous clothing store. And it's fabulous vintage. In a definitive kind of way. But to offer these things to people that further, make them feel like empowered.
A lot of people have said to me that they threw something away because the buttons fell off, or the seam ripped.
Or stains. Stains is another place you can go.
Stains, we should do a workshop on that. Because a lot of that is, different cleaners.
And it's all the things that you have done. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
One of the things you did last year, which was so much fun, was you had a fashion show during the literary festival.
Oh, yes. Well, that was it's Kate Traskos's baby. The Books to Looks was a big hit as part of the literary festival. She's really the creative force behind that, and I was delighted to help work on it.
Yeah.
And this year we're going to repeat that again during Lit Fest with some vintage and some fun things that where we're taking the covers of the books and bringing them to life on models.
So, it's so cool. I got to say, when I first heard about it, I was like, what? How are they going to do that? And you really pulled it off. It was so cool. And so, folks have to stop by and see it. It's usually the Friday night, I think.
It's the Friday at 118 Elliot at the beginning of the festival.
Yes.
I believe so.
And so they project a picture of the book cover, and then someone from the community comes out as a model, and walks the runway.
Yes.
It's really cool. It's a great inspired idea. You are part of the Vintage Fashion Guild, which I never knew existed.
Right.
But I looked at their site, and it is so interesting.
Yeah. A great organization. It's been around for, I believe, 20 or 25 years. I've been a member since 2006, I want to say, and I'm going into my second year on the board of directors. I'm also on the membership committee as well. Definitely, we're looking for young life to join the group, and the dues are very low, $35 a year for membership, but you are juried in, and you're juried in either as a professional in the business or a writer, or there are museum curators, there are historians, all sorts of people from different aspects of the vintage fashion world.
And do you set standards there of what vintage is? And
there are standards of what vintage is, and also if you're a seller and you apply as a professional seller, there are standards of how to present your items. They have a lot of free resources for anybody to learn about what fabrics are what, like satins and twills, and the difference between a weave and a material composition. They have resources on, probably the most famous one is the Vintage Fashion Guild label resource, which is thousands and thousands of photos of the labels that were made in clothing by companies and designers. And you can, if you have a garment, you can look up alphabetically what that label is and then see what years your piece were made.
So anybody who is interested in vintage wear at all.
You might want to know what you have in your closet, or if you're out thrifting, you might want to say, like, well, is this from the 60s or from the 50s? How do I know? All kinds of details about how something's constructed as well as the label. So they've just been a wonderful educational resource for anybody.
Right now, I think fashion is going through a really huge change. There's so much focus on sustainability in terms of products and labor and everything. And also recycling and upcycling. So again, I think that's another reason why vintage used clothing.
And when you're talking about empowering someone to sew on their own buttons, it's sustainability too. You're keeping those items out of the landfill. There's a huge problem with textile pollution, with modern textiles. Fast fashion pumping out hundreds of thousands of new designs a week. Those items winding up in our thrift stores, not getting purchased, winding up going to other countries, and only a very small percentage gets actually recycled officially. A lot of it goes to the resale market again and then winds up as landfill waste, waste on our beaches, literal garbage. Very bad for the planet. And so, teaching people about keeping your items in good condition, figuring out what items are sewn better or made better or the materials are better so they'll last longer. There's definitely a lot of awareness to dressing sustainably and doing what's good for the earth as well. It segues right into the vintage market.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely, yes. Well, thanks for that. Talking about going into people's closets, exploring people's closets and estates, what kind of advice would you offer to folks about, if they open up a closet of their great Aunt Mary's stuff, and they don't know?
Right. Well, I'm always happy to tell them, what they have, even if it's something that I might not purchase also. You know, I can give advice or suggestions on what to do with things. But one thing that strikes me as a little bit ironic and interesting over the years is most people make a assumptions about what is valuable, and they're thinking it's their great aunt's wedding dress, their the fur coat in the closet, that sort of thing. And it really, there's a lot of value in things that are more rare because people might have thrown them out. And so the things that might have gotten thrown out, it includes things like beautiful underwear from the 1920s, what we call them tap shorts, and things like that, that, you know, the unmentionables are a lovely thing to you know, preserve and clean, of course, and mend. Trousseaux, the lingerie. And then in terms of like what men wore when they were working, probably the hottest items right now in the vintage business are the jeans that were left behind in a barn, or the old chore jackets and things like that. Even in poor condition, some of those items have astronomical value now because maybe they stopped being made in the 1930s or 40s. And there's a whole subset of young folk typically that really want that authentic workwear. So if people are looking in their barns and their sheds and their closets and attics and things like that, don't throw out stuff, even if it's got some damage or issue or whatever, or you think, oh, nobody would want that. Ask me. Ask me first, because I do have the expertise at this point after 24 years in business that I have my finger on the pulse of what's needed.
And you were born with having your eye trained, right?
I guess so.
As well. So that's a lot of
fortunate.
expertise too. Another thing that really impressed me, in addition to the Vintage Fashion Guild website, is your website.
Oh, wow.
Morning Glory's website. And one of the things that endeared me to it was that I think towards the end, you talked about different restaurants in town that people could go to, and you explained the parking in Brattleboro. And, you know, I got to give you big kudos for doing that.
Oh, thanks for
because
noticing.
it's not easy. It's not easy.
I think that a lot of people are intimidated by the Brattleboro parking and the changes, and it's kept them from exploring our wonderful downtown. So I'm always helping people with the parking and willing to do that. And yes, I did add that very recently to the website to explain exactly how to find the kiosk you're in and how to pay by text and all that stuff.
It's so great. It helped me.
Oh, good. That's good. Well, I encourage other businesses to
no, it's really, it was great. It was just,
out.
you know, it was just obviously you're making things user-friendly for people, which is a big deal. We're walking into foliage season. And the Literary Festival, we've got all kinds of things starting to go on. And of course, that segues right into holidays. So what's in the pipeline for you coming up?
Well, first of all, don't forget Halloween also is coming. And at the end, though we don't sell costumes, we sell beautiful things that could be part of your costume.
That's right.
So definitely come to Morning Glorious for your creative costuming ideas. And then I'm very excited about the Brattleboro in Miniature, which is coming to downtown for the holidays. The holiday windows are going to be an amazing project with over 60, I believe, businesses, restaurants, organizations, nonprofits downtown doing some theme of miniature. There's going to be a guide that will help you go from place to place. And we're doing fashion dolls.
Oh, cool.
So it's going to be quite a fun project.
Oh, that would be great.
Our window will be a miniature fashion show.
Oh, excellent. That'll be really fun. Yeah, we look forward to that. Yeah, the Brattleboro in Miniature, that's a whole other scene you're going to be hearing about.
And don't let the parking intimidate you. I know it's frustrating, but come downtown for the holidays and walk around, especially if you have kids, walk around and look at all the windows.
Yes.
It's going to be amazing.
Yes. Jen, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Wendy. What a pleasure.
It was really fun. And, you know, for folks in the audience, you know, if you have any questions about vintage wear, or if you're looking to learn how to hem a skirt, or if you have questions about things that might be roaming around in your closet, Jen is definitely the person.
Or you need a sparkly outfit.
Or you need a sparkly shirt. Yes, to go to the TV station in. Check out Morning Glorious.
Thank you.
There's always something fun to see, and Jen is a perfect hostess.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thanks to all of you for joining us today for a really great show. A lot of fun. Again, another fabulous thing that's happening in downtown Brattleboro, a wonderful place to visit and to go in and say hi to Jen. That's on Elliot Street, and we will see you next week.